The hospital smelled like something between hope and decay. Aria Vale hated it. She stood outside the ICU room, her arms folded tightly across her chest as if that alone could hold her together. Through the glass, machines blinked in slow, indifferent rhythms. Tubes. Wires. Silence. And on the bed, her little sister. Too small for all of this. Too fragile for a world that never gave them a chance. Her condition is getting worse. The doctor's voice was careful. Measured. Like he had said the same thing too many times to too many people. Aria didn't turn. How long? A pause. Without treatment? Another pause. Longer this time. Weeks. That word didn't feel real. Weeks. Like time was something they still had. Aria nodded slowly. Not because she accepted it, but because she had no choice. I'll find the money, she said. The doctor didn't reply. Because they both knew. She wouldn't. Not legally. Not in time. Night fell quickly. It always did in this city. The streets outside were wet, reflecting neon lights that made everything look more alive than it actually was. Aria walked without direction, her thoughts louder than the noise around her. Bills. Medicine. Time. All of it slipping. She stopped under a broken streetlight. Not because she planned to, but because her legs refused to go any further. You look like someone who needs help. The voice came from behind. Smooth. Calm. Wrong. Aria didn't turn. I'm not interested. Footsteps approached anyway. Slow. Confident. That's unfortunate, the man said. He stepped beside her, just enough for her to see him from the corner of her eye. Clean suit. Perfect posture. Completely out of place. Because I'm offering something you can't get anywhere else. That made her look. Just briefly. What? The man smiled faintly. Not friendly. Not kind. Calculated. A solution. Aria let out a quiet breath. I don't need charity. Good, he replied. Because this isn't that. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Thin. But heavy in a way that had nothing to do with weight. Everything your sister needs, he said. Aria didn't take it. And the cost? The man's smile widened slightly. Just one job. Silence. Because nothing in this world came without a price. Aria stared at the envelope. Then at him. What kind of job? He handed it to her. She hesitated. Then took it. Inside. A photograph. A man. Sharp features. Cold eyes. The kind of presence you could feel even through paper. And the name. Dominic Kane. You want me to get information? She asked. The man shook his head slowly. No. A pause. Then. He said it. We want you to kill him. The city noise faded. Everything. Just stopped. Aria looked at the photo again. This wasn't a normal target. This was someone untouchable. Someone dangerous. Someone who didn't get killed by people like her. Why me? She asked. The man's eyes didn't waver. Because you have nothing left to lose. That hit. Harder than it should have. Because it was true. No money. No power. No time. Just a sister. Running out of breath. Aria closed her eyes for a brief second. When she opened them, something had changed. Not softer. Colder. What do I have to do? The man stepped back slightly, like the deal had already been made. Get close to him. A pause. Make him trust you. Another pause. Then end it. Simple. Too simple. Aria looked down at the photo one last time. Dominic Kane. A man she had never met. A life she was about to take. Or a life that would take hers instead. Fine, she said. No emotion. No hesitation. Because hesitation was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. The man nodded once. Satisfied. Good. He turned to leave. Then stopped. One more thing, he added without looking back. Aria waited. Don't fall for him. A pause. Then he was gone. The street felt colder. Quieter. Aria stood there alone, the photo still in her hand, the weight of what she had just agreed to settling in slowly. Because somewhere deep down, she already knew. This wasn't just a job. It was a point of no return. And once she stepped into his world, there would be no way out. The invitation arrived the next evening. No sender. No explanation. Just a black envelope, thick paper, her name written in elegant, deliberate strokes, as if whoever sent it already knew exactly who she was. Aria stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside, a single card. Kane Industries Gala, 8 p.m. And beneath it, an address. She didn't need more than that. This was it. The first step. The point where everything stopped being theory, and became real. The building towered above the city like it owned it. Glass and steel reflecting lights from every direction, too clean, too perfect, like nothing bad could ever happen inside. Aria knew better. Places like this didn't hide danger. They buried it. She adjusted the simple black dress she had borrowed, nothing flashy, nothing memorable, and stepped inside. Everything changed the moment she crossed the threshold. Music. Laughter. Champagne. People dressed like they had never known struggle, moving like the world had always belonged to them. And somewhere in the middle of all that, him. She didn't see him at first. She felt him. A shift in the room. A subtle gravity. Then her eyes found him. Dominic Kane. Standing near the center, surrounded but untouched, like the chaos of the world moved around him instead of through him. He wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. Power like his didn't demand attention. It controlled it. Aria slowed her steps without realizing it. This was the man she was supposed to kill. And for the first time, she understood what that really meant. This wasn't just dangerous. It was impossible. Careful. The voice came from her side, snapping her out of her thoughts. A waiter passing by gave her a brief glance. You're staring, he added quietly. Aria looked away immediately. Too late. Because across the room, Dominic had already noticed. Their eyes met. And everything else disappeared. It wasn't dramatic. Not loud. But it was sharp. Like being seen in a way that stripped everything away. Aria held his gaze. Didn't look down. Didn't look away. That was her first mistake. Because Dominic Kane didn't forget people who didn't flinch. He started walking toward her. Not fast. Not rushed. But certain. Every step controlled. Every movement intentional. Aria felt it in her chest. A subtle tightening. Not fear. Something worse. Awareness. He stopped in front of her. Close enough that she could see the details now. Sharp jaw. Calm eyes. Danger disguised as composure. You don't belong here, he said. His voice was low. Measured. Not a question. Aria tilted her head slightly. Neither do you. A pause. Something flickered in his expression. Then he smiled. Not friendly. Interested. That's an unusual answer. Close enough that no one else could hear. Because you don't know what kind of man you're talking to. A pause. Her voice dropped. Then maybe you should tell me. Silence. A long one. Because now. This wasn't casual anymore. This was a game. And they both knew it. Dominic straightened slightly, studying her one last time. Then. He made a decision. Walk with me, he said. Not an invitation. A command. Aria hesitated for half a second. Then followed. Because this was exactly what she needed. And exactly what she should have been afraid of. As they moved away from the crowd, the noise faded, replaced by something quieter, more controlled. Private. Dangerous. You're not like the others here, he said. Aria let out a soft breath. I could say the same about you. Another pause. Then. You're hiding something, he added. That hit. Direct. Accurate. Too fast. Aria smiled faintly. So are you. He stopped walking. Turned to face her fully now. And for the first time. There was no distance. No distraction. Just him. And her. That's true, he admitted. A pause. Then. He said something she didn't expect. But I don't think you're lying about everything. Her breath caught. Just slightly. Because that was more dangerous than suspicion. It meant he saw something real. And that made everything harder. Because now, this wasn't just about getting close. It was about staying hidden. While being seen. From across the room, unnoticed by both of them. Someone was watching. Phone in hand. Recording everything. Because this was going exactly as planned. And Aria had no idea. She had just stepped into a trap much bigger than she thought. The city looked different from above. Quieter. Smaller. Almost harmless. Aria stood beside the floor-to-ceiling glass window, her reflection faint against the endless lights below. From up here, everything felt distant, like none of it could touch her. But that was an illusion. Because behind her, he was still there. Dominic Kane didn't speak immediately. He watched. Not casually. Not politely. Carefully. You're thinking too much, he said finally. Aria didn't turn. Is that a problem? A pause. For most people, he replied, yes. She let out a quiet breath. And for you? Another pause. It depends on what you're thinking about. Silence settled between them again. But it wasn't empty. It was filled with something sharper now. Because they were alone. And without the noise of the crowd. There was nowhere to hide. Aria turned slowly, leaning lightly against the glass. You brought me up here, she said. A pause. Why? Dominic stepped closer. Not rushed. Not aggressive. Measured. Because I don't like guessing, he said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. About what? Another step. You. That word landed heavier than it should have. Aria crossed her arms slightly, not defensive, just controlled. And what makes you think I'm worth figuring out? He stopped just in front of her. Close enough now that the distance meant something. Because you're not afraid of me, he said. A pause. And you should be. Silence. Because he was right. She should have been. But fear wasn't what she felt. Not anymore. Maybe I don't scare easily, she replied. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Then. No, he said quietly. I think you just don't have anything left to lose. That hit exactly where it was supposed to. Aria's expression didn't change. But something inside her did. Because that wasn't a guess. That was observation. Accurate. Dangerously accurate. You're making assumptions, she said. Dominic shook his head slightly. No, he replied. I'm connecting patterns. Another step closer. You don't look around the room like you belong, he continued. You don't talk like you care what people think. A pause. And you don't react when I get close. Silence. Because every word was true. And he knew it. So? Aria said quietly. He held her gaze. So that makes you interesting. Not suspicious. Not threatening. Interesting. That was worse. Because it meant. He wasn't pushing her away. He was pulling her in. Her phone vibrated. Once. Sharp. Intrusive. Aria didn't check it. But she didn't need to. She already knew who it was. Dominic noticed. You're not going to answer that? She shook her head slightly. It's nothing important. He didn't believe her. That much was obvious. But he didn't press. Instead, he stepped back. Just enough to give space. Walk with me, he said again. Aria followed. Because now, she couldn't afford not to. They moved through a quieter part of the building. Less people. More shadows. Private. Controlled. Dangerous. Tell me something real, Dominic said. Not looking at her. Just walking. Aria frowned slightly. What do you mean? A truth, he replied. Something you wouldn't tell anyone else here. A test. Clear. Direct. Aria thought for a second. Then said. I hate hospitals. It came out before she could stop it. Too real. Too unguarded. Dominic slowed slightly. Why? A pause. Aria looked ahead. Because they're full of people pretending everything's going to be okay. Silence. That's not always pretending, he said. No, she replied. Sometimes it's lying. Another pause. This one different. Because now. Something had shifted again. He wasn't analyzing anymore. He was listening. Her phone vibrated again. This time. Twice. Urgent. Dominic stopped walking. Answer it. Not a suggestion. Aria hesitated. Then pulled it out. One message. Unknown number. You're running out of time. Her grip tightened. Another message followed instantly. Finish the job tonight. The air changed. Everything slowed. Because this was it. No more waiting. No more getting close. No more pretending this could stretch longer. Tonight. She had to kill him. You look like you just made a decision, Dominic said. Aria looked up. His eyes were on her again. Sharp. Watching everything. Maybe I did, she said quietly. A pause. Then. He said something that made everything worse. Good, he replied. Because so did I. Silence. Her chest tightened slightly. About what? Dominic stepped closer again. Closer than before. This time. There was no space left. About you, he said. A pause. You're either very dangerous. His voice dropped. Or very lost. Another pause. Then. Either way. His eyes locked onto hers. I'm not letting you walk out of here without knowing which one it is. That wasn't curiosity anymore. That was control. And suddenly. Aria realized something. This wasn't just her getting close to him. He was already pulling her into his world. And once that happened. That hit harder than it should have. Her finger pressed slightly against the trigger. Just a little more. And it would be over. Everything. But it didn't move. Do it, he said. Quiet. Almost soft. Like he was giving her permission. Or challenging her. Aria's breath tightened. Don't. A step. He moved closer. The gun didn't waver. But her control did. Then shoot, he said. Another step. Now close enough. That if she pulled the trigger, he wouldn't miss. Silence. The kind that presses against your chest. The kind that forces truth out. Because this wasn't about the mission anymore. This was about her. And what she could. Or couldn't. Do. Why aren't you afraid? She whispered. Dominic held her gaze. Because you're hesitating. A pause. And people who hesitate. Another step. Don't want to kill. That broke something. Not visibly. Not loudly. But inside. Something shifted. Her hand trembled. Just slightly. Enough. Dominic saw it. And that was the moment. He made his move. Slow. Deliberate. He reached out. And gently. Pushed the gun aside. Not force. Not speed. Certainty. Because he knew. She wouldn't shoot. And he was right. The gun lowered. Not because she chose to. Because she couldn't. A sharp sound exploded through the room. The door. Blown open. Gunfire followed instantly. Loud. Violent. Uncontrolled. Aria turned. Too late. Men flooded in. Armed. Prepared. This wasn't chaos. This was planned. You set me up, she whispered. From the doorway. A familiar voice answered. You were never meant to kill him. A pause. Just to bring him to us. Everything clicked. The messages. The pressure. The timing. She was never the weapon. She was the bait. Dominic grabbed her arm instantly, pulling her down as bullets tore through the walls behind them. Stay with me, he said. Her eyes snapped to his. Confused. Shaken. Why? She asked. A pause. Gunfire echoed around them. Then. He answered. Because you didn't pull the trigger. That was it. That was the line. The moment everything changed. Because now. They weren't enemies anymore. They were targets. Together. More gunfire. Closer now. Dominic pulled a weapon from beneath the table, movements fast, precise, like this wasn't chaos for him. This was familiar. Stay behind me, he said. Not asking. Commanding. Aria didn't argue. Didn't hesitate. Because now. There was no side left to choose. Only survival. And somewhere in the chaos. The man who set this all in motion smiled. Because no matter what happened next. The game had already begun. And both of them. Were exactly where he wanted them. The first bullet missed her by inches. Concrete shattered behind Aria's shoulder as Dominic pulled her down hard, both of them hitting the floor just as another wave of gunfire tore through the room. Stay low, he said. His voice wasn't loud. But it cut through everything. Aria pressed against the ground, her heart slamming violently against her ribs, every instinct screaming at her to move, but she forced herself to stay still. Because now. Movement meant death. Dominic shifted beside her, his movements fast, controlled, like he had already mapped out the entire room in his head. How many? She whispered. A pause. Then. Too many. That wasn't reassuring. Another burst of gunfire ripped across the space, closer this time, forcing them further back behind the heavy table. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. And still, they kept coming. This wasn't supposed to happen, Aria said, her voice tighter now. Dominic didn't look at her. No, he replied. It was always supposed to happen. That made her turn. What? A pause. They don't leave things unfinished, he said. Another shot. Closer. This wasn't just about me. His eyes flicked to her briefly. It was about you too. That realization hit instantly. Because if they knew she failed, then she wasn't useful anymore. She was a loose end. They're going to kill me, she said quietly. Dominic didn't hesitate. Yes. No comfort. No lies. Just truth. And strangely, that steadied her more than anything else. Then we don't stay here, she said. A beat. Dominic glanced at her again. And for the first time, there was something different in his expression. Not suspicion. Recognition. No, he said. We don't. Another crash. The door behind them burst open wider as more men pushed in, tightening the space, closing every possible exit. They were being cornered. Systematically. Deliberately. Back exit? Aria asked quickly. Blocked, Dominic replied. Windows? Too high. Silence. Because there were no good options left. Only bad ones. Dominic exhaled once. Then made a decision. We break through. Aria looked at him. That's not a plan. It's the only one. Another burst of gunfire forced them lower. On my signal, he added. Her grip tightened. Because this was it. No safety. No backup. Just survival. 3 seconds. 2. 1. Now. They moved. Fast. Explosive. Dominic stepped out first, firing with precision, forcing the nearest attackers to pull back just enough. Space. That's all they needed. Aria followed instantly, staying close, moving exactly where he moved, not thinking, just reacting. Shots echoed around them. Too close. Too loud. A man stepped into her path. She reacted. Before she could think. The gun in her hand fired. Once. Silence. He dropped. Aria froze for half a second. Because she hadn't planned that. Hadn't meant to. Move. Dominic snapped. And just like that. She did. No time to process. No time to feel. They pushed forward, breaking through the line, forcing their way toward the side corridor. Almost there. Almost. A shot rang out. Closer than the rest. Dominic staggered slightly. Aria's breath caught. You're hit. It's nothing, he said immediately. But it wasn't nothing. She saw it. Blood. Not heavy. But real. Keep moving, he added. She didn't argue. Because stopping wasn't an option. They reached the corridor. Empty. Too empty. But it was a way out. Dominic grabbed her wrist, pulling her forward, his grip firm but not harsh. Stay with me, he said. Not a command this time. Something else. Something closer. Aria nodded. Because now. She understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about choosing a side. And she already had. They burst through the final door. Cold night air hit instantly. Freedom. For a second. Just one. Then. Headlights snapped on. Engines roared. More, her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She aimed. Pulled the trigger. The shot rang out. The man jerked back. The car swerved violently, losing control before slamming into a street barrier. Silence. Then. Impact. Aria dropped back into her seat, her chest rising sharply as the realization hit. She didn't freeze this time. She didn't hesitate. Good, Dominic said. Not praise. Acknowledgement. And somehow, that mattered more. Another car moved in from behind. Closer. Aggressive. They're boxing us in, Aria said. Dominic's eyes flicked to the mirror. I see it. A pause. Then. He accelerated. Hard. The engine screamed as the car surged forward, forcing a gap between the vehicles. Small. But enough. Dominic took it. The car shot through the opening, scraping against one of the pursuing vehicles, sparks flying as metal collided. For a second. They were free. Then. Another engine roared ahead. Blocking the road. They planned this, Aria said. Dominic didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because it was obvious now. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a net. And it was closing. Hold on, he said. That was the only warning she got. He turned the wheel sharply. Not toward the road. But toward the side. The car smashed through a narrow barrier, crashing into an unfinished side route, barely wide enough to fit. Concrete dust filled the air. Debris scattered behind them. And suddenly. Silence. No headlights. No engines. Nothing. For a moment. They had lost them. Aria let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. That won't last, she said. No, Dominic replied. But it's enough. He slowed the car, turning into a dark, nearly invisible passage between buildings before finally cutting the engine. The world went quiet. Too quiet. Only the sound of their breathing remained. Heavy. Uneven. Real. Aria leaned back slightly, her hands still tight around the gun, her body still tense like the danger hadn't ended yet. Because it hadn't. Not really. You're bleeding, she said. Dominic glanced down briefly at his side. It's not deep. That wasn't reassuring. Let me see, she said. A pause. He hesitated. Just slightly. Then. He nodded. Aria shifted closer, her movements careful but quick, pushing aside the fabric just enough to see. Blood. Not fatal. But worse than he admitted. You should have told me, she said quietly. And slowed you down, he replied. A pause. No. That wasn't an answer. But it was honest. Aria tore a strip from the lining of her dress, pressing it firmly against the wound. Dominic didn't react. Didn't flinch. Just watched her. You stayed, he said after a moment. Her hands paused slightly. I had nowhere else to go. A lie. Not entirely. But not the truth either. Dominic's gaze didn't shift. No, he said quietly. You did. A pause. Running alone would have been easier. Silence. Because he was right. She could have disappeared in the chaos. Saved herself. Left him behind. But she didn't. Maybe I'm not that kind of person, she said. Another pause. Then. He said something that changed everything. Good. Simple. But final. Because now. He believed her. Not completely. Not blindly. But enough. And in a world like his. That was everything. Somewhere in the distance. Engines roared again. Faint. But getting closer. Dominic adjusted slightly, pushing himself back upright despite the pain. "They'll find us," he said. Aria looked at him. "Then we move." "A beat." He nodded. Because now. There was no hesitation left between them. No doubt. No distance. Just one truth. They were in this together. And whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The city faded behind them. Street by street. Light by light. Until even the noise disappeared. Dominic drove without speaking, his focus fixed ahead, hands steady on the wheel despite the blood slowly soaking through the makeshift bandage at his side. Aria didn't ask where they were going this time. Because she understood something now. If he told her too much, it meant he trusted her. And that came with consequences. They turned off the main road. Then again. And again. Deeper into somewhere forgotten. Old buildings. Closed shops. No cameras. No people. A dead zone. The kind of place that didn't exist on maps. The car finally stopped in front of a narrow, unmarked structure tucked between two abandoned warehouses. No sign. No lights. Nothing that said anyone lived there. "This is it?" Aria asked quietly. Dominic cut the engine. "For now." A pause. Then he stepped out. Aria followed immediately. Because staying in the car felt worse. He unlocked the door quickly, scanning the street once before stepping inside. She entered right behind him. And the moment the door shut, everything changed. The inside was different. Clean. Organized. Prepared. Weapons. Supplies. Surveillance screens dark but ready. This wasn't a hideout. It was a fallback. A place meant for situations exactly like this. Aria turned slowly, taking it all in. "You planned for this." Dominic moved toward a cabinet, pulling out medical supplies with practiced ease. "I planned for everything." That didn't sound like arrogance. It sounded like survival. "Sit," he said, not looking at her. Aria hesitated. "You're the one bleeding." A pause. Then. "And you're the one who can fix it," he replied. That stopped her. "How do you know that?" Dominic glanced at her briefly. "You don't hesitate around wounds," he said. "You knew where to press. How to stop the bleeding." A pause. "That's not instinct." Another pause. "That's experience." Silence. Because he was right. Again. Aria let out a quiet breath and stepped closer. "I used to work in a clinic," she said. Not the whole truth. But enough. Dominic didn't push further. Instead, he sat down, pulling his shirt aside just enough to expose the wound. Up close. It looked worse. The bullet had grazed deep enough to tear muscle. Not fatal. But not something you ignore. "You should have stopped sooner," she said. "And let them catch us," he replied. A pause. "No." Aria cleaned the wound carefully, her movements steady despite everything that had happened. Dominic didn't look away. Not from her. "You're not who they sent," he said after a moment. Her hands paused slightly. "What do you mean?" A pause. "They sent someone desperate," he replied. "Someone easy to control." His gaze didn't shift. "But that's not what you are." Silence. Because that was dangerous. More dangerous than suspicion. It meant he was starting to understand her. And the more he understood, the harder it would be to lie. "You don't know anything about me," she said quietly. Dominic held her gaze. "No," he admitted. "But I know what you didn't do." A pause. "You didn't shoot." That again. That moment. That choice. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Then, a small nod. Not dramatic. Not emotional. But final. Because now, she wasn't just someone caught in this. She had chosen to stay. And in his world, that choice meant everything. Outside, the engines grew louder. Closer. The hunt wasn't over. Not even close. But inside that room, for the first time, they weren't alone anymore. The sound came first. Low. Distant. But unmistakable. Engines. More than one. Getting closer. Aria didn't need to look at Dominic. She already knew. He heard it too. They found us, she said quietly. Dominic didn't respond immediately. He was already moving. Weapons checked. Positions calculated. Every movement precise. Controlled. Faster than expected, he said. A pause. But not surprising. Aria stepped closer to the table, picking up another weapon, her hands steady now, not like before. Not uncertain. Ready. How many? She asked. Dominic moved toward the surveillance panel, flicking it on. The screens lit up instantly. Black and white feeds. Grainy. But enough. 3 cars. No. 4. Men stepping out. Armed. Organized. Not random. Not desperate. Professional. This isn't just a cleanup crew, Aria said. Dominic's expression hardened slightly. No, he replied. A pause. This is someone making sure we don't leave. The front gate snapped open. Not forced. By code. Aria froze. They have access. Dominic's jaw tightened. Yes. That meant only one thing. Someone close. Someone who knew his systems. His safe houses. His moves. Who? She asked. Silence. Because there weren't many people who could do that. Too few. And that made it worse. A voice crackled through the speaker system. Calm. Familiar. You always did choose interesting hiding spots. Aria's breath caught. Dominic didn't move. But something in his expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. I was wondering when you'd show yourself, he said. The voice laughed softly. Of course you were. A pause. Wouldn't be like you to run without knowing who's chasing you. Aria looked between the speaker and Dominic. You know him. Dominic didn't take his eyes off the camera feed. Yes. A pause. Unfortunately. The voice continued. You should have stayed dead, Dominic. Another pause. It would have made this easier. Dominic's hand tightened slightly around his weapon. You don't get to decide that. A quiet chuckle. No, the voice said. But I do get to decide how it ends. The cameras flickered. Then, one of them zoomed in. A man stepped into view. Tall. Composed. Wearing a suit too clean for what was about to happen. Aria felt the shift instantly. Because this wasn't just another enemy. This was someone who belonged in Dominic's world. At the same level. Or worse. Who is that? She asked quietly. Dominic's voice was colder now. Adrian Voss. The name meant nothing to her. But the way he said it meant everything. He used to be my partner, Dominic added. A pause. Before he tried to kill me. That clicked instantly. The betrayal. The ambush. Everything. You survived, Aria said. Yes. Another pause. He didn't like that. Adrian's voice returned through the speakers. You always were hard to kill, he said. A beat. But not impossible. The first explosion hit the outer wall. The building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Alarms blared. They're coming in, Aria said. Dominic didn't move. Not yet. Because he wasn't reacting. He was choosing. Another explosion. Closer. The back entrance. We split? Aria asked quickly. No. Immediate. Firm. A pause. We stay together. That wasn't strategy. That was something else. The door at the far end of the room buckled. Once. Twice. Then. It gave. Gunfire erupted instantly. Loud. Violent. Closer than before. Dominic moved first. Fast. Precise. Taking down the first man before he fully entered the room. Aria followed. No hesitation. No freezing. Just action. Another shot. Another body dropped. They moved together now. Not perfectly. But instinctively. Covering angles. Watching movement. Surviving. More footsteps. More men. Too many. They're pushing us back, Aria said. Dominic glanced toward the rear exit. We don't hold here. Another shot. Closer. Too close. Move, he said. They retreated through the back corridor, gunfire chasing them, walls cracking under impact, the air thick with smoke and dust. Aria's heart pounded. But her mind. Clear. Because now. There was no confusion left. No mission. No lies. Just one truth. They were both targets. They reached the final door. Dominic kicked it open. Cold air rushed in. Freedom. For a second. Then. A figure stepped into view. Blocking their path. Adrian Voss. Up close. He looked exactly like his voice. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. End of the road, Adrian said. Gun raised. Perfect aim. Dominic stepped forward slightly. Putting himself between Aria and the gun. You should have stayed in the shadows, he said. Adrian smiled faintly. And miss this? A pause. No. His finger tightened on the trigger. And in that moment, everything slowed. Because this wasn't just a fight anymore. It was the moment the past caught up. And one of them was about to fall. The gun didn't fire. Not immediately. Because for a split second, everything froze. Adrian Voss stood perfectly still, his finger resting on the trigger, his expression calm like he already knew how this would end. Dominic didn't move either. Didn't reach for his weapon. Didn't step back. He just stood there. Between Aria and the bullet. Still protecting people who aren't worth it, Adrian said. His voice was almost amused. Dominic's gaze didn't waver. You wouldn't understand. A pause. Adrian tilted his head slightly. No, he said softly. I understand perfectly. Another pause. That's why I got rid of it. Silence. Because that wasn't just a statement. It was a confession. Whatever he used to be. Whatever they used to have. It was gone. Aria's grip tightened around her gun. Her mind raced. Too many angles. Too many possibilities. Too little time. Because this wasn't a standoff. This was execution. And she knew it. Step aside, Adrian said. Not to Dominic. To her. You don't have to die with him. That offer wasn't kindness. It was calculation. Aria did. Dominic reacted instantly, closing the distance, disarming Adrian completely before he could recover. The gun hit the ground. Hard. Silence followed. Heavy. Breathing. Real. Adrian leaned slightly against the wall, blood slowly spreading through his shirt, his eyes still locked on Aria. Interesting, he murmured. A pause. I misjudged you. Aria didn't lower her gun. Didn't step back. Because now. There was no going back. You did, she said quietly. Adrian let out a faint breath. Almost a laugh. Good. A pause. Then maybe this wasn't a waste. Dominic stepped forward. Who else? He demanded. Adrian's gaze shifted to him. Then. He smiled. Weak. But real. You really think this ends with me? Silence. Because that answer was already clear. There's always someone above, Adrian continued. A pause. You just haven't met them yet. His body shifted slightly. Then stilled. Gone. Silence filled the space again. But this time. It wasn't relief. It was something heavier. Because the truth was out. This wasn't over. Not even close. Aria lowered the gun slowly. Her hand steady. But her mind. Not. What now? She asked. Dominic looked at her. Really looked. Not as a stranger. Not as a threat. As someone who had just made a choice. A real one. Now, he said quietly. We find out who's really behind this. A pause. Then. He added. Together. And for the first time. That word didn't feel temporary. It felt real. For a moment. No one moved. The night air hung heavy between them, carrying the faint scent of smoke, gunpowder, and something else. Something unfinished. Aria lowered the gun slowly, her fingers still tight around the grip as if letting go meant losing control of everything that had just happened. Dominic didn't look at Adrian's body again. He didn't need to. Because whatever answers Adrian had, they died with him. Or so it seemed. We need to leave, Dominic said. His voice was calm. Too calm for what had just happened. Aria nodded. Because staying here was no longer an option. They moved quickly, slipping into the shadows behind the building before anyone else could arrive. No words. No hesitation. Just movement. Because now. Silence mattered more than anything. The car they had used was gone. Not stolen. Removed. They're cleaning everything, Aria said. Dominic scanned the street once. Yes. A pause. Which means they're watching. That changed everything. Because this wasn't just pursuit anymore. It was control. Then we don't go where they expect, Aria said. Dominic looked at her. A brief moment. Then. A small nod. Exactly. They moved on foot. Through alleys. Through broken streets. Avoiding lights. Avoiding cameras. Avoiding patterns. After nearly 20 minutes. They stopped. A small, forgotten parking structure. Empty. Except for one car. Old. Unremarkable. Perfect. Dominic opened the door, checking quickly before sliding inside. Aria followed. The engine turned over after a second. Quiet. Subtle. Where now? She asked. A pause. Then. Somewhere even they don't know, he replied. Aria leaned back slightly. Does a place like that exist? Dominic's eyes stayed on the road. It has to. They drove in silence for a while. Not empty silence. Thinking silence. Because now, the question wasn't just survival. It was understanding. Adrian said there's someone above him, Aria said finally. Dominic didn't answer immediately. His grip on the wheel tightened just slightly. There is. A pause. And if he was involved? Another pause. Then this is bigger than I thought. Aria turned toward him. Who are we talking about? Dominic exhaled slowly. Like he was deciding how much to say. A network, he said. Not a gang. Not a cartel. A pause. Something older. Aria frowned slightly. Older how? Dominic's eyes flicked toward her briefly. Invisible. That word lingered. Because it meant something very specific. They don't fight wars, he continued. They create them. A pause. They don't take power. They decide who gets it. Aria felt the weight of that immediately. Because that wasn't just influence. That was control. And Adrian worked for them, she asked. Yes. Immediate. Certain. Then why kill you, she pressed. Dominic's expression darkened slightly. Because I stopped playing by their rules. A pause. And they don't allow that. Silence filled the car again. Heavier now. Because this wasn't just personal anymore. This was a system. What are they called? Aria asked quietly. Dominic didn't answer right away. Because names had power. Then finally. They call themselves. A pause. The circle. The words settled between them. Cold. Final. And now they want us dead, Aria said. Dominic shook his head slightly. No. A pause. They want control. Another pause. Dead is just easier. Aria let out a slow breath. So what do we do? Dominic didn't hesitate this time. Because the answer was already there. Waiting. We don't run. A pause. We hit back. That shifted something. Because that wasn't survival. That was war. With what? Aria asked. Dominic glanced at her. And for the first time, there was something different in his eyes. Not just control. Not just calculation. Something sharper. Purpose. Everything they think we don't have, he said. A pause. Then. He added quietly. And everyone they forgot about. Aria studied him for a moment. Then. You already have a plan. Dominic didn't smile. But something close to it appeared. I always do. The car disappeared into the night. Further from the city. Closer to something else. Something bigger. Because now. This wasn't about escape. It was about taking down something that was never meant to fall. And they were going to try anyway. The road stretched endlessly ahead. No lights. No signs. Just darkness and distance. Aria didn't ask where they were going anymore. Because she understood something now. Dominic wasn't just running. He was returning. The car slowed as they approached an old industrial district far outside the city. Abandoned factories. Rusting gates. Broken glass. Dead space. Or at least. That's what it looked like. Dominic pulled into a narrow passage between two massive warehouse structures and killed the engine. Silence followed instantly. This is it? Aria asked. A pause. Then. Part of it, he replied. He stepped out first. Aria followed. The air felt different here. Still. Watching. Dominic walked toward a large metal door, worn with age, barely holding onto its hinges. He knocked once. Then again. A pattern. Not random. Intentional. Why? Marcus looked at her. Then at Dominic. Then back at her. Because Adrian wasn't the top, he said. A pause. He was just the door. Silence. Because they already knew that. Then who's behind it? Aria asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward a table. Pulled out a file. Old. Worn. He dropped it in front of them. You ever heard of Project Black Veil? He asked. Aria shook her head. Dominic didn't. And that was the problem. I thought it was buried, Dominic said quietly. Marcus shook his head. Nothing ever really disappears. Aria opened the file slowly. Photos. Names. Dates. All connected. All hidden. What is this? She whispered. Marcus leaned against the table. It's how the circle controls everything, he said. A pause. Governments. Money. People. Another pause. And Dominic. His eyes locked onto him. You were part of it. Silence. Heavy. Explosive. Aria's head snapped up. What? Dominic didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Because it was true. The room went silent. Not the kind of silence that fades. The kind that presses down. Heavy. Unavoidable. Aria didn't move. Didn't blink. Her eyes locked onto Dominic like if she looked away, even for a second, everything would fall apart. You were part of it, she said. Her voice wasn't loud. But it cut deeper than anything else in the room. Dominic didn't answer. Not immediately. Because there wasn't an easy way to say it. No version of the truth that didn't change everything. Marcus crossed his arms, watching. Not interfering. Because this mattered. Say something, Aria said. A step closer. Tell me he's wrong. Dominic exhaled slowly. Then. He's not. That was it. No excuse. No denial. Just truth. And it hit harder than any lie ever could. Aria shook her head slightly. No, she whispered. A pause. No, that doesn't make sense. Her voice cracked just slightly. But she forced it back under control. You fight them, she said. You're running from them. Another step closer. You almost died because of them. Dominic met her gaze. Yes. A pause. Because I left. Silence. Because that changed everything. You didn't tell me, Aria said. Not accusing. Just, empty. I couldn't, he replied. A pause. They don't let people walk away. Marcus stepped in quietly. Black Veil wasn't just a project, he said. It was a system. A pause. Recruitment. Control. Elimination. Aria's eyes flicked between them. You mean? Marcus nodded. They build people like him. A pause. Then they own them. The words settled slowly. Cold. Unforgiving. Aria looked back at Dominic. So what were you? Another silence. Longer this time. Because this answer mattered more than all the others. Dominic's voice was quieter now. I was the one they sent when something needed to disappear. That hit. Hard. Because she understood exactly what that meant. Not a soldier. Not a leader. A weapon. And how many? She asked. Her voice barely above a whisper. Dominic didn't answer. Because the number didn't matter. The damage did. Aria took a step back. Not out of fear. Out of distance. So everything, she said slowly. Everything you told me was real, Dominic cut in. Immediate. Firm. She froze. Was it? A pause. Then. Yes. That word didn't fix anything. But it mattered. You expect me to believe that? She asked. Dominic didn't hesitate. No. A pause. But I need you to understand one thing. He stepped forward. Not forceful. Not aggressive. Honest. I left that life behind, he said. Another step. And they tried to kill me for it. Silence. Because that part. She had seen. People like that don't change, she said. A defense. A wall. Dominic held her gaze. I didn't, he replied. A pause. I chose to. That was different. Aria looked down briefly. Her thoughts racing. Her instincts pulling in different directions. Because everything she knew, everything she believed, was breaking apart. Why didn't you tell me? She asked quietly. Dominic didn't answer immediately. Then. Because if you knew who I really was. A pause. You would have pulled the trigger. Silence. Because that was the truth. And they both knew it. Aria closed her eyes for a second. Just one. Because she needed it. When she opened them, everything was clearer. Not easier. But clearer. I still might, she said. Marcus shifted slightly. Watching closely now. Dominic didn't move. Didn't react. Then do it, he said quietly. No challenge. No fear. Just acceptance. The room held its breath. Because this was the real moment. Not the first time she pointed a gun at him. But the first time. She knew exactly who he was. Aria's hand moved slightly. Not to grab the gun. Not yet. Because something else was stronger now. Not trust. Not forgiveness. Understanding. If I wanted you dead, she said slowly, I would have done it already. A pause. Then. She looked at Marcus. We don't have time for this. That shifted everything. Because she had made her choice. Not blindly. Not emotionally. Deliberately. She turned back to Dominic. You're going to tell me everything, she said. A pause. No more secrets. Dominic nodded once. No more. Marcus let out a slow breath. Good, he muttered. Then. He looked at both of them. Because if we're going after the circle. A pause. We're going to need more than trust. Another pause. We're going to need war. Silence fell again. But this time. It wasn't heavy. It was focused. Because now. They knew what they were up against. And more importantly. They knew who they were fighting beside. No one spoke for a while. Not because there was nothing to say. But because everything had changed. The truth was out. The lines were drawn. And now. There was only one direction left. Forward. Marcus broke the silence first. If we're doing this, he said, pushing himself off the table, we don't do it blind. He moved across the room, pulling up multiple screens, data flooding in, maps, names, transaction lines, movement patterns. Aria stepped closer instinctively. Because this was something she understood. Systems. Connections. Patterns. The circle doesn't move directly, Marcus continued. They operate through layers. A pause. Cut one, another replaces it. Dominic leaned forward slightly. Then we don't cut the layers. A beat. We hit the core. Marcus gave a dry laugh. That place is locked down tighter than anything in the city, Marcus said. Dominic didn't disagree. That's why it matters. Aria stepped closer to the screen. Studying. Breaking it down. There's always a weak entry point, she said. A pause. Something small. Something overlooked. Marcus pulled up additional data. Blueprints. Security rotations. Access logs. There, Aria said suddenly. Pointing. A service access route. Minimal security. Ignored. Maintenance? Marcus frowned. Aria nodded. No one watches what they think doesn't matter. Dominic's expression shifted slightly. Not surprise. Approval. That's our way in, he said. Marcus leaned back slightly. And once we're inside? Dominic answered without hesitation. We take their system. A pause. And use it against them. Silence. Because that wasn't a small move. That was war. Aria looked between them. Then said quietly. When do we start? Dominic didn't hesitate. Tonight. Marcus let out a short breath. Almost a laugh. Of course it is. Across the city. Far above the lights. A screen flickered. Data shifting. Patterns adjusting. A figure stood in the dark, watching. They're moving sooner than expected, a voice said. Another voice replied. Calm. Unbothered. Good. A pause. Let them. The screen zoomed in. Locking onto one name. Dominic Kane. It makes the end more interesting. The city looked different at night. Not quieter. Just, more honest. Because the things hiding during the day came alive in the dark. Helix data systems stood at the center of it all. A glass tower. Cold. Perfect. Untouchable. Or at least. That's what it was supposed to be. Aria watched from across the street, her eyes fixed on the building as she adjusted the small earpiece in her ear. Security rotation just changed, Marcus's voice came through. 3 guards at the south entrance. Cameras sweeping every 6 seconds. Dominic stood beside her, his gaze steady, calculating. We don't go through the front, he said. Aria nodded. Maintenance route. A pause. Then. They moved. The alley behind the building was darker than the rest of the street. Narrow. Hidden. Exactly what they needed. A small steel door sat flush against the wall. Unmarked. Ignored. This is it, Aria said quietly. Dominic stepped forward, pulling out a small device, connecting it to the panel beside the door. A few seconds. Then. A soft click. We're in, he said. They slipped inside. And just like that. The world changed. No noise. No chaos. Just. Silence. Controlled. Artificial. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit, sterile. Too clean. Too perfect. Feels wrong, Aria whispered. It should, Dominic replied. They moved carefully, every step measured, every corner checked. Because this wasn't a place you rushed through. This was a place that watched you. Even when you couldn't see it. Marcus's voice returned. You're clear for now, he said. A pause. But don't get comfortable. They reached the first junction. 2 paths. Dominic didn't hesitate. Left, he said. Aria followed. Because now. She trusted him. Not blindly. But enough. The deeper they went. The quieter it became. Until even their footsteps felt too loud. Something's off, Aria said. Dominic slowed slightly. I know. A pause. Then. Marcus spoke again. I'm not seeing internal security movement. That wasn't good. What does that mean? Aria asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. It means either you're incredibly lucky. A pause. Or they're letting you in. Silence. Because that was worse. Dominic's expression hardened. Stay sharp. They moved faster now. Not careless. But aware. The corridor opened into a larger room. Servers. Rows and rows of them. Blinking lights. Data flowing endlessly. This is it, Aria whispered. The core. Or close enough. Dominic moved toward the central terminal. Can you access it? He asked. Aria stepped forward. Hands steady. Focused. Give me a minute. She connected the device Marcus gave her, fingers moving quickly across the interface. Code. Layers. Security protocols. It's deeper than expected, she said. Marcus's voice came through. Can you break it? A pause. Then. Yes. But something in her tone changed. Subtle. Barely noticeable. Dominic caught it. What is it? Aria didn't answer immediately. Her eyes scanning the screen. Processing. This isn't just surveillance, she said slowly. A pause. They're not predicting behavior. Another pause. Longer. They're controlling it. Silence. Because that changed everything. Explain, Dominic said. Aria swallowed slightly. They're feeding information into systems. Affecting decisions. Affecting outcomes. Her voice dropped. They're not watching the world. A pause. They're shaping it. Marcus cursed quietly on the other end. That's not possible. Aria's eyes didn't leave the screen. It is. And then. Something else appeared. A file. Hidden. Encrypted deeper than everything else. Different. What is that? Dominic asked. Aria hesitated. Just for a second. I don't know. But she opened it anyway. The screen flickered. Data loaded. Then. A list appeared. Names. Hundreds. Thousands. Aria's breath caught. What is this? Marcus asked. Silence. Because Aria recognized something. Patterns. These weren't random people. They were targets. They're marking people, she whispered. A pause. For what? No answer. Then. Her eyes stopped on one name. And everything froze. Because it wasn't just any name. It was hers. Aria Vale. Silence filled the room. Her hand trembled slightly. Because suddenly. This wasn't just about Dominic. This wasn't just about the circle. This was about her. And she had no idea. Why? Behind them. A soft sound echoed. Not loud. Not obvious. But enough. Dominic turned instantly. Gun raised. Too late. The lights cut out. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that darkness, a voice whispered. Welcome to the system. Darkness. Total. The kind that erases space, direction, reality itself. Aria couldn't see anything. But she could feel it. Something watching. Not human. Not close. But everywhere. Dominic, she whispered. I'm here, his voice came instantly. Close. Grounding. Real. A soft hum filled the room. Low at first. Then rising. Dominic looked at her. Not as a question. Not as doubt. But as realization. That's why they want you dead, he said. Aria didn't respond. Because now. She understood. This wasn't about Dominic. This was about her. She turned toward the screen. Then why show me this, she asked. A pause. Then. Because, the voice replied. We want to see what you'll do next. The lights flickered. The system around them shifted. Security protocols activating. Doors locking. You're not letting us leave, Dominic said. The voice didn't deny it. No. A pause. But we are giving you a choice. Silence. Return to the system. Or. Another pause. Burn it. Everything went still. Because that wasn't a trap. It was a test. Aria looked at the screen. Then at Dominic. All the lies. All the truth. All the choices. And for the first time. Everything was clear. They think they can predict us, she said quietly. Dominic didn't answer. Because he already knew where this was going. Aria stepped forward. Hands steady. Eyes locked on the system. Then let's give them something they can't. She reached for the terminal. Marcus's voice exploded through the comms. Aria, what are you doing? She didn't stop. Ending it, she said. Her fingers moved. Fast. Precise. Not breaking the system. Overloading it. Turning its own control. Against itself. The screens flickered wildly. Data collapsing. Structures failing. You don't understand what you're doing, the voice said. For the first time. Less calm. Aria didn't look up. I do. A pause. Then. I'm choosing. The system screamed. Lights exploded. And everything went dark. Morning. Silence. Real silence this time. The building stood. But empty. Dead. No signals. No system. No circle. Outside. Aria stood at the edge of the rooftop. The city stretching endlessly ahead. Dominic stepped beside her. A pause. You destroyed it. Aria shook her head slightly. No. She looked at him. I set it free. A pause. What happens now? He asked. Aria looked back at the city. Now. A small breath. They won't be able to predict anything. Another pause. Not us. Not anymore. Dominic nodded slightly. Then. For the first time. Not as survivors. Not as targets. But as something else. Together, he asked. Aria didn't hesitate. Together. The camera pulls back. The city below. Unpredictable. Free. And somewhere. In the shadows. Something still watches. Because systems don't die. They evolve.